Good morning. My name's Zach Maxer. I'm Government Affairs Director at Gentry Lock Consulting. And I was asked today to kind of walk through some of the legislative process, kind of how the sausage is made from the bill perspective. I'm going to give you a quick background of who I am, and then happy to walk through kind of the full calendar of what a legislative year looks like, and all the different maneuvers the bill can take. Like I said, I'm Government Affairs Director at Gentry Lock, which is originally a law firm that's been around for over 100 years, normally based out of Roanoke, but we've got Roanoke, Richmond, Lynchburg, and Norfolk offices. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, we started a consulting firm to deal with government affairs and public relations, which is where I'm at and have been for 4 years. Prior to that, I was in Senator Norman's office. Was the majority leader of the Virginia Senate. I was there for about 8 years. So I've got about 12, 13 years of General Assembly experience, dealing with creating rules and all the fun things that come along with that. The best thing to probably start with is the legislative session, and we'll start in January and kind of work through the calendar year so you can see what the full process looks like. So in January, the second week of Wednesday, second Wednesday of January every year, the General Assembly is going to gavel in for their session. We have a short session, which is 45 days, and then a long session this year coming up, which is 60 days. The 2 extra weeks are to deal with creating our biannual budget, which is every year the single most important bill that we deal with, especially this year with some of the federal cuts to Medicaid and everything that we're going to do on that. As you all know, there's 140 members of the General Assembly, 100 delegates, and 40 senators. And once we gavel in, it is a full 60-day process, although technically they count Saturdays and Sundays when no one's working, and Fridays, which are basically half days. So you've got, quote unquote, 60 days to go through normally about 3,000 bills, and again, and the budget that will then make it to, if it makes it through the process, we'll go to the governor's desk for review. And potentially there'll be a back and forth there. Obviously, the bills can be introduced in the House or the Senate. Sometimes they're done on both sides with both bills that are similar or the exact same, and sometimes it's just in one chamber. When that's done, if it's, let's say, the Senate bill, which the issue that I'm sure you all are familiar with that's on the horizon for you, will likely be on the Senate side. It'll go through the normal committee process, which is just a full committee hearing. And then after a vote there successful, it will go to the floor, and then transition to the other side of the body to deal with a subcommittee vote, a full committee vote, and then a vote there on the House floor. All of these different junctures are points to interact with a number of different members for to explain your story and your concerns about any kind of legislation. And that number obviously grows as you go from a committee to the full body, a number of people that you need to talk with and explain your issues with. If a bill is successfully able to make it through and a committee vote, a full, sometimes it does get referred to another committee, only if it's like a fiscal impact on it. It'll go to the governor, obviously. There'll be a review process there. We've got about a 30-day window for making comments to the governor and to the attorney general's office as they review it. And then if the governor makes amendments or vetoes it, we'll come back in mid to late April and deal with the governor's vetoes. Normally, if the bill's passed, it'll then become effective July 1st unless there's language in there that specifically says that it becomes effective at a later date. They can imagine there's a whole rest of the calendar year as far as work that needs to be done. And so normally in the off session, there are commissions and committees that are meeting, reviewing legislation, coming up with ideas. It's come from citizens, it's come from organizations, sometimes just from members, local governments, what have you. One of these commissions is the Housing Commission, which has a few legislative members on it, some senators, some Democrats are normally, since they're a majority in both bodies at the moment, they'll have 2 or 3 members in the House, with the House Republicans and Senate Republicans have one. And then there's also experts from industry that are on here. So some realtors out, some folks, as well as a number of other people in the industry. And really what these commissions are built to do is to give thorough review to potential bills to look at the next year. So it's give them time to do study. These commissions have full staffs that really are able to organize these members, review these, what other states may do on issues. If there's any research questions members have, they can look at it. And it also provides the ability for organizations and members to go and present to them and make their case on whether a new issue pops up, so that if they decide to make a recommendation or they'll have the full understanding of what they're recommending. And then basically from there, we go right back into the normal process as far as the bills, kind of November, December timeframe. You'll start to see bills cropping up for next year, recommendations will be made after you've heard all the concerns, and then we start all over again in the next January. But one of the complications, I guess, for this year, as you know, is that we are in election year. There's an election every year in Virginia. This year it's the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and all of the members of the House of Delegates. That'll happen November 4th, and a transition period will begin between November and January, where the incoming administration will be hiring people to be agency heads. There may be changes in the General Assembly as far as members leaving, and everyone will start to really gear up essentially for this next year. So it's going to be a really compressed learning period, so we can see who everyone is and meet them. As I'm sure you've seen in the news, the expected winners of these races are, and this is just as of today, it's expected to be a Democratic trifecta that you would ask a few weeks ago, which comes with different complications and just different people that you're going to be talking to about these issues. As I'm sure that members of your association may be aware, Senator Scott Thurvell, who is a majority leader in the Virginia Senate, has been working through the Housing Commission process currently to deal with the liability issue and being able to limit liability. That's something he tried a few years ago, if I remember correctly, and he was unsuccessful in doing that, and he brought it back up. Probably, I think October 23rd, the Housing Subcommittee meets again, and then they'll have a final full meeting in December. Between those two meetings, they will decide if they want to make it a recommendation of the commission. If this issue is recommended, it doesn't mean it's guaranteed to pass. It does help the cause if you're advocating for it, if you've got that seal of approval that has been vetted by the Housing Commission, that they've heard all of the concerns and they feel that this is the appropriate decision to make. I really like to answer any kind of questions, really, because the process can go many different ways. There's a lot of different levers and options for you all to kind of be involved in the process. And I'm happy to walk through some of those first, but really the legislative process is a jumbled one. When we're in session, you may only get 24 hours notice, if that, about when your bill is going to be up. You have a rough idea because you've got such a short window before a bill can be heard. And committees only meet once, maybe twice a week. And they'll tell you, you'll get the agenda for the next day saying your bill may be up. And really it's coming upon someone who wants to advocate to get to as many members as possible on that committee before that happens. Because once they're hearing it that day, there's a presentation that are going to be made. Maybe you can sort of vote the last minute, but a lot of the work is done before the bill is even before committee. It's more engaging with members and expressing your concerns. Some of this takes a lot of time, whether it be through money, if you're trying to negotiate a bill out and make sure that some concerns can be mitigated, or obviously if you're trying to stop something outright, there's a lot of conversations that need to be had with members about why this is a bad idea, and probably doing more research to get back to them and explain that. There's a lot of ways that bill can die. Sometimes it has a fiscal impact. They say this is going to cost the state money. It goes to the finance committee, and the finance goes, "This is great. We want to do this. We're not going to fund it." So then it dies. Obviously, there's always a vote on is this is good policy, this is a good decision for the Commonwealth to do. And that's a policy decision for members to make. And then additionally, you've got, what I call, we always call it the silly season, which comes later in the session where everyone starts to get a little angry and grumpy because we've been working for 60 days, about 14 hours a day straight. And, someone may get up, and I've had this happen to me. I remember introduced a bill for us. It was not really a controversial bill, but he decided the day that our bill was up, he was going to give up and give an incendiary speech. And they decided that they weren't too pleased with his speech, and the bill ended. So you get into a lot of personal dynamics between members as far as bills dying as well. And then, of course, there's the governor's office and the attorney general's office, as I stated earlier. I'd love to, again, I want to be a resource to you all as far as answering questions about how you can potentially engage in this process. It's not a complicated business. It's really just getting in front of decision makers, making your case. You can do everything right in this business and still lose. You can talk to every member. You can make the best case that you can. At the end of the day, you've got 140 members making 140 different decisions, independent decisions about what they think on a particular issue. And it can be, there may be party considerations, there may be political considerations, maybe local considerations, policy ones. Again, are they grumpy and angry at another member because they voted against their bill that day or they didn't get their coffee yet? You've got a lot of factors that are going into these decisions. And so really being able to advocate and get in front of people as quickly as possible and effectively as possible is key. Some of this takes time from building up relationships when we're going to town halls and actively meeting with them, especially when you don't need something, just to know that you're there and building up that relationship of trust so they know to come to you when a bill does come up. That's a long process. It takes time and it takes an active association to really push forward and doing that and going out and meeting those members. A lot of what we do though, I think you've all had contracted help in the past. In the lobbies, a lot of work is done sometimes just in the hallway randomly. A bill comes up, it's up later that day. You're walking down the hall and you run into the member that you need. You grab them for 2 minutes, explain what the issue is as quickly, concisely, and effectively as possible. And then they go, okay, I can do that. I can make that change. Or yes, I'm going to vote this way. No, I'm not going to vote with you. And getting all that information and relaying it back and forth with everybody is critical, because again, you find out within less than 24 hours builds up. You've got to do additional touches with members, and then hopefully you talk to everyone. Hopefully you made a convincing argument, and then hopefully they're with you after you've done that. But really finding out where you are and the realities of where you should be at the end of the day is incredibly important. But I'm happy to take as many questions as possible, or I can keep going. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in a situation like the bill to limit liability, what kind of cost considerations would they consider in the process of evaluating whether or not it would be too costly to the Commonwealth?
You'd have to make a convincing argument that it would impact the government agencies directly. I think a lot of this is cost to the industry and to small business owners, obviously. And look, that's going to be an effective argument for you all when you're making this case. What's really going to be beneficial to you all, I think, from a little, I'm not as versed as I should be on this, but a little bit I know about it. You got to look at other states. Everyone likes to look at all 50 states and what everyone else is doing. If you can make a compelling argument that only 5 states do this, and here's what's happening in those states when this happens, you're gonna have to go and get that data. Sometimes it takes time to research that and really get the information on it. So looking to other states that have done this similar decision, I think you really got to go and see if there have been an impact to other state governments, and then use that to. The issue is when the department that handles the fiscal impact statements is making them, they're kind of in an isolated box as far as making the decisions. I mean, we've routinely gone in the finance committee. well, fiscal impact statement of $2 million on the bill, and it's, you know, you're changing 3 words, and we have to go and argue that it doesn't have a fiscal impact. So they make those decisions, obviously arbitrarily, they've got their process, but there's a whole department that deals with deciding if things have fiscal impacts, and they do a full review of every agency, every law, and they look at that. So that's a decision they make. You can't make the determination whether it's gonna have a fiscal impact statement. It's gonna be done. You can argue, but they're gonna be the ultimate arbiter of that in many respects.
Thank you.
So we exist for the purpose of addressing these issues.
Yeah.
And the board has put a lot of time and effort into discussions and putting together talking points and actually, you know, addressing the housing commission. What I'm wondering about isn't what we collectively could do, but more what can individuals do? I mean, how do we have our voices heard? It's one thing for us to say, I represent the association, but it's another thing to get a call from a constituent.
Yep.
Like, so if you can address that, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. You can very easily Google who's my legislator. You can put in your address and it'll tell you who your legislator is, and maybe the association can assist them to do all of that. Having someone from the district, who is a small business owner, who is a neighbor, who lives in the community, who operates there, is the most effective thing. I was in LA, like I said, I was in LA for a number of years. Every morning, you've got 400 plus emails that you've got to go through. The vast majority of them are kind of a robocall, generic email that someone just clicked the box and said, I agree with this message, send this person an email, and they send it for you. Having personalized, focused messages to members is incredibly important, because they're going to be more likely to read them. And it's going to be more likely to sort of, there are a lot of offices that treat those differently. Some, you know, members tell their staff, tell me how many phone calls and how many emails we received on this bill on every issue. And they'll tally it up and look at it and use that as a barometer for making a decision. So, go to the local town halls for members. If they've got small dollar events that are $25 or so, going to those events and being seen in person and making a relationship with them so they understand who you are. Calling them, organizing a lobby day on the Hill. There's it's really effective. Some associations that like to organize events where they say, well, this day we're all going to come up here, we're going to flood the Capitol with as many members of our association as possible. We're going to schedule as many meetings as possible, and we're just going to go door to door. And they're going to know we're here. We're going to rent out we're going to reserve a room at the Capitol, and we're going to have our own membership there. We're going to invite members to come down and talk to us. And just being present, it's incredibly helpful. But yeah, I think whether it's an in-person outreach, a phone call, an email, just making sure that you as an individual are reaching out to your directors, delegate and senator, can have a tremendous effect, especially when you get multiple of them, because they're going to be able to separate those from, again, the 500 emails that are on some random bill. It may not even be in their committee that they've just gotten the same message on. So any kind of form of communication that is localized is incredibly important. I would say start today on that. Find out a calendar, go and sign up for the newsletter so you can listen to their calendars and events and try and go to as many things as possible and just be seen as a resource for them for information.
So you addressed my question the way I asked it, but let me drill down a little bit. Because this issue is before the Housing Commission, does it make sense for us to individually to try to communicate directly with members of the Housing Commission?
Yeah, I would say if something's in the Housing Commission, I would say it needs to be focused probably on a lot of the members. If you are in the district of the members that are on that commission, I think it could be helpful. When you're doing a commission process, I guess, a lot of that is, there's a lot of negotiation that goes on, I guess, I don't say behind the scenes, but throughout the year. that takes a lot of time. I'm sure you all have already talked to Senator Searle directly, and expressed your concerns, and I'm sure he has said that he is not sharing those concerns. And that happens sometimes. So you're gonna go to numbers and say, we can't do X because it's gonna do Y, and they're gonna say, I disagree. You can present all the facts as they are, and they fundamentally disagree with you or see it in a different light. But I think, yeah, going to those housing commission members, writing the housing commission, executive director, can be incredibly helpful. But again, if it's
Make that statement one more time.
writing the housing commission, head director.
So, Mr. Lee Master,
Yes, sir.
if the bill is enacted, anyway, good to see you again. If the bill is enacted, it has to go through budget committee, right? How likely is it to be killed in budget committee, as it's been stated, if it's too expensive?
Yeah, if the fiscal impact is attached, it's gonna have, so what ultimately ends up happening for these processes, you'll have two committee hearings, essentially. You'll have a normal hearing, like we'll say the general laws committee or probably the courts committee on this. And that committee will look at the policy decision on whether this is a good idea or not. They're not gonna look at the funding, they're just gonna review everything and say, should we, as the General Assembly, make this a policy for the Commonwealth? And they're gonna vote, and then they'll refer it to the Finance Committee. And that committee is going to then just say, we're not gonna look at the policy. This committee has said this is a good policy, we're not gonna decide, should we fund this? Or is this, not something we should fund? I would say, normally, if anything has a fiscal impact, it's gonna be, detrimental to its success, especially depending on how large it is. I would say especially this year, the General Assembly is going to be very sensitive to spending additional money. We've got a incredibly large deficit coming our way from basically we've got 300 million plus another 300 million plus X to come our way to figure out Medicaid gaps and some Medicare issues. So they're gonna have to find some money. And so anything that adds additional money and concerns that they're gonna need to fund is gonna be real negative this year. We've met with and been to some committees to deal with this. They pretty much told everyone, don't come and ask for money this year. You're not gonna get it. We've got to figure out backfilling these other issues first before we address anything else. If it's a one-time fix, they may address it, but other than that, that's the long-term sustained cost of the Commonwealth. They're not going to be interested in doing that in the future. Yes, sir.
Is the committee only concerned with how it financially affects the Commonwealth as a whole, or the consumers of the Commonwealth?
The finance committee will be focused on that. Now, the courts committee or whatever committee, if you come up as a small business owner and say, this is going to negatively impact my business because of what it's going to do, they're going to make that policy decision there. The finance committee is just, hey, we've got state dollars. How do we impact that? So the argument on this, or the impact of the small business made when making that policy decision.
Would it be effective to have clients, past clients in drove come and also have a word in this to talk about how it would affect them financially to improve that, say, due to our insurance policies rising, it will raise the cost of my inspection from $450 to $600 at the lowest amount.
Yeah. The more people that you can use and tap as a resource that have personal life stories, and part of this is also, you're dealing with members who all probably going through the inspection process. They're gonna have their own built-in idea of what it's supposed to look like. But I think having those can be effective. Doing some media op-eds can be effective as well. Early on, as many people as possible, you can route and calls.
Right, so is there a way that we could get based off of, an average amount that we all, like say the average in Virginia for an inspection is $465. Is there a way through the insurance company back there that we could show how it would increase based off our premiums per inspection that we had to funnel down to our clients? And then push that out to our clients and say, hey, past clients, are you okay with your inspection or service now costing $700 for a 3-bedroom house? Is there any way that we could kind of get that data together to push towards our clients, then have our clients have a voice in this as well?
Well, let me add, looking at other states that have made this decision can also be incredibly helpful because potentially, and it's not going to be true everywhere, but you're going to have examples there. Potentially, they've already done a study in another state, looking at see if they've done any diligence there, could be incredibly helpful.
I think what this gentleman is telling us is the way laws get made is like making sausage, but you have to be one-on-one with the people making those decisions. That's really where the influence is. So in the past, we would go to E board for some of the issues that came up there in person. Some of these gentlemen here are going to the housing commission one-on-one. That's a great way to get in front of people. And explain things. When Surville brought this up a few years ago, I went on social media and took on that cause. I think now it's even more important. If you get a social media campaign going, it'll get legs and get it. If it's in the public's interest, they will take it forward. So it's very important.
Yeah, look, I think everyone here knows this, having a majority leader carry a bill is not helpful. Because he's got sway, he can put stuff on the scale when he needs to, if he wants to. And obviously, if the housing commission doesn't endorse it, they've got another, feather in the cap to make it easier to have one other members who may not be as familiar with it, and just go saying, well, the housing commission looked at this, and they said it's okay. So what are you talking about? The good news about having, here's what I'll say, if the Democratic trifecta happens, and if you've got the majority leader carrying the bill you're concerned about, there's a couple of things that happen when you have a trifecta. A lot of those personality differences that are inter-party or intra-party start to show themselves. And so, there may be a bill that has nothing to do with the bill that could end up ultimately causing the final decision on it. So what I mean is, and this happens all the time, bills get taken hostage, essentially. And they know, I know you care about this bill, it's important to you, we're gonna wait to vote on this until I get what I want this. And so there's some negotiation there, and again, sometimes feelings get hurt, because people decide, we're gonna kill this, and because really, they've got to decide what their priorities are. Now, I know Scott, and I know him fairly well. The great thing about Scott is he brings like 50 bills every year. So he's got a lot of things he has to carry about, and he can't care about all of them, and he can't put his time forward into all of them as much as he probably wants. So he's gonna have to make decisions about how much time he's gonna spend managing his office, making sure all of the members are on the same page on big issues that are gonna be, in the news. And they're gonna have big decisions between him and the authority. He's gonna have to make sure that the budget is taken care of, and again, all of the members are on the same page. Then he's got his list of personalized priorities. And then maybe stuff that are important to his locality, maybe things that are important to his himself personally, but he's not gonna be able to do everything. And so, sometimes it is helpful if you have a member who is overstretched themselves. And frankly, you can go to another member and say, look, he really cares about this bill. If you want to get people on that, why don't you do something with this? And you can help create leverage when you're having those conversations. But those are behind the scene conversations that you have with members. But yeah, I think getting your message out effectively and on this, having those personal conversations are incredibly important. And then, like I said, when you're in the General Assembly, it's building, it is just, if you're there on the ground, in the rooms, in the committee room, grabbing someone while they're going from committee to committee, can I walk with you, can I talk to you for a couple of minutes, and just hammer it out multiple times. And, the challenging thing that we do when we deal with is, there are 3,000 bills every year. And there's 140 members, and they don't have time to learn on this. So they have to do a shorthand and lead or lean on some of the other members. So if someone else that is a trusted source to them and says, well, they know all the housing stuff and they know all the insurance stuff. If they say it's good, then it's good. I don't need to fact check them, but you gotta follow up and have those conversations. And if I do many members as possible, but having that localized approach is very important.
That's what I'm saying.
Happy to answer any questions about any of that. Not into the fish. I can jump some. Well, I'll handle this then. This is a long process. I know it sounds like it's quick. And it is, there's gonna be easy small ads as far as some days coming up in the housing commission. But overall, making sure the industry is taken care of over the long term. There are multiple sessions, we're here every year, there's new bills that can be brought. You should be doing all of these things as part of the reaching out, going to meetings, touching base with your members. And don't just do it this year when you need something, when there's a big issue. Do it next year, if, whether it's bill or they were not doing the year for that, keep doing it every year. Because then they're going to know that you're an ever-present industry. They're gonna understand your issues. And then you can have those quick conversations when they're needed. But build up that roadmap of reaching out to people as many times as possible, especially when you don't need, because they're gonna remember that. Yes, sir.
Zach, I think that's the most important thing you said all day, is what that about establishing the relationship in advance, don't go to the last minute saying, in a panic.
Yeah, it's, look, we're there for two months. I have 10 months where I spend developing relationships. And then again, a decade plus of building relationships, because every now and then I need 2 minutes. And hopefully they're gonna give it to me. And so, start doing it now, not just for this issue, but for moving forward. I think you'll see the dividends. It takes time for those relationships, but you'll see them.